Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here with a familiar face, Mark Conroy, Managing Director North America for Silversea Cruises. And we wanted to talk with Mark about what's going on with Silversea, but even more importantly, what he sees for the future of cruising, because obviously he has been in the industry, is one of my best friends in the industry, best friends period, and also knows everything about cruising. So his opinions, I think, are valid and something that you should listen to. And we're going to find out all about that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Mark, first of all, how are you doing? I actually, we just interviewed Marilyn, your Marilyn Conroy, your wife, and we talked to her about Riviera River cruises, and now we're here again, and I loved your backdrop there. You have all your covers that you've been on over the years, including ones that I think we might have had a hand in. So
yeah, for sure. Your jacket's up there on that one with Matthew Upchurch.
There you go. As I said, that was my one chance to be on the cover of Travel Agent magazine way back when. But we've done more than that over the years. But how are you and Marilyn doing down there?
Well, it's good. This is a good way to test your marriage for sure. But actually, she said yesterday she got mad at me. She's going to leave me and realized she could only go to the other side of the house, so she came back. So,
well, that's it. But of course, and I hear you've been doing a lot of walking too. So
yeah, I've finally tried to get back into shape because with my commute and everything, I didn't have much time to exercise. So what I'm able to do is, and the weather's been beautiful and lovely to be. If you're going to be trapped somewhere, South Florida is not a bad place. And we're not allowed on the beach, but we're allowed to walk on the road next to the beach. So I've been walking along the beach every day. So watching ships come in. There's about 9 oil tankers sitting off there waiting for prices to change before they offload because the prices are so low right now. And a couple cruise ships too.
Well, I know. Well, maybe that will be cruise ships someday, waiting for the passengers to
Well, there's been a Princess ship that's been coming and going. I think it was the Caribbean Princess because they're still looking for something, to do with it.
Well, we'll see. But anyway, how is Silversea Cruises working through this process?
I think we're like everybody else. This is a new world for us. It's something that nobody's experienced before. I've been around since '73, and I went through the oil crisis, and I've been through 9/11 and the Achille Lauro hijacking and all that stuff. And we've never seen anything that's been so dramatic and happened so quickly and so extended. I think the extended part is the worst part of it. After 9/11, it was about a week, and then people woke up. First of all, for a week, nobody was going to go, and it couldn't go anywhere. And then for a while, people said they weren't going to go anywhere. And then, 6 months later, it was almost back to normal. And normal became something totally different. It became taking your shoes off, going through x-ray machines, doing all that stuff that you never thought you would ever have to do. And I think the same thing's going to happen going forward when we all start operating again. The new normal is going to be very different.
Yeah, well, although the new normal may take a little longer to become whatever that new normal is, I think. Now, when does the Silversea project that it will restart cruise operations? Granted, that could be extended.
Well, we have a plan for July. We have a plan for August. We have a plan for September. So we keep going through different scenarios, and a lot of it's not in our hands. Working for Roberto Martinoli and Richard Fain, the one thing that they're both very adamant about is focus on those things that you can affect. So we're looking at how can we make our part of it work so that we can ensure that people are safe. So, the things that have to happen is the first thing that has to happen is borders have to open. And right now, no borders are open. Right now, we have ships sitting in Tenerife that will be going to Europe. We have ships sitting in Panama that will be going to the U.S. and to Alaska, and one down in the Galapagos that's just sitting there waiting. So there's not much we can do about that until the borders open. And then the second thing needs to happen is the airlines need to obviously pick back up their schedules. So that'll be so we can get people to the places we operate. And as you know, this time of year, other than Alaska and the Galapagos, most of our businesses are all focused on Europe itself. So and so we need borders to open there. But the thing that we can control and we're focusing on is two things. Number one is testing. We feel that obviously the golden thing would be a treatment for this, effective treatment, and a vaccine would be amazing. But if that doesn't happen, I think testing will be the thing that allows us to get back into business. So we're talking to a lot of different vendors about getting a test that's two things. Number one, reliable, because most of them now still aren't 100% accurate. And then secondly, one that can be administered easily and quickly and where you can get the results quickly. So we have a vision or a plan. One of our thoughts is that if we set up this testing protocol where we might even send you a test kit with your documents.
That's interesting.
And ask you to test yourself the day before you leave. And if you test positive, you don't come. And then maybe then again, probably we'll test you again before you board with the test kit again. And if you again are positive, you won't allowed to be aborted. So that's really what we're working on. And we think there's a solution there that they'll get us there. And then what happens is that, the cruise industry's gotten a bad rap, and I feel bad for Princess and Holland. Princess had their outbreak because of the fact that they were catering to a market. A third of the customers on that ship at any given time were Chinese, a third were Japanese, and a third were from the rest of the world. So it was pretty obvious that they could have gotten it. Now they had some other issues later on with the quarantine but at the end of the day, the reason people know about coronavirus on ships is because we're required to report it. I think we hospitals and nursing homes are the only people that have to report it. So that's why people know about it. But to put it in perspective, I think it's 59,000 people have died from coronavirus. And, I think of those, 50 of them, less than 50 of them were on ships. So
yeah, and that seems to be the number
of people passengers got it.
Yes, that seems to be the number of people are settling on, just 50, and that's people who may have died afterwards, long after, even though they might have contracted it on the ship.
So our idea is to keep people who are infected off the ship, because as you know, it doesn't start on the ship. What happens is people bring it aboard, and then they unexpectedly spread it to their fellow passengers and to our crew, and that's how it gets spread. So the idea would be to keep healthy people on the ship and people who have the virus to keep them off. And then once you're on board, having the right protocols as it relates to cleaning. Already this is a virus that's similar to the norovirus in structure, and the same success for destroying norovirus can also be effective against this virus. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to try to build on our protocols that we already have in place for norovirus, and we've had an amazing record. I don't think we've had a case, or maybe one in the last 2 years. So that's what we're focusing on. Again, focusing on those things that we can affect. Canada's officially opening on July 2nd, right now at least, and so we're thinking about that's the date. But at the same time, CDC is July 17th, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, if we can get the testing protocols in place, and then obviously if there's some kind of effective treatment for this, and then ultimately a vaccine for it, I think people will put it into the same perspective as they do other communicable diseases. A friend of mine's an epidemiologist, and he said that in reality, this probably has about the same mortality rate as the flu, because so many more people have it than they know have it. And if you think about the flu, I think it's 20 million Americans get it every year, and between 30 and 40,000 die from it, or complications from it. And he said the difference between the flu and this is it's, first of all, much, much more contagious. And the second thing is there's no treatment for it. So
at least not at this time.
Exactly. So, and there's no vaccine for it. Ironically, there's a vaccine for the flu too, but less than a third of the population actually uses it. So I think, but again, it gets people putting things into perspective as what the risk is. One of the things that's a little bit ironic, and I don't know how we're going to do it, is this idea of having, you have to get a doctor's note if you're over 70 to travel, which is a little bit ridiculous. I think you need to, the consumer that's 70 can decide if they want to travel and take whatever risks is associated with traveling. It's like when you were 6 years old and needed a note from a doctor to go back to school. Remember, these aren't 6 years old. These are sophisticated people. And it shouldn't be age-based. It should be health-based, because, I'm 70 almost, not quite, but and I'm healthier than some 45-year-olds I know, and I'm a lot unhealthier than some 70-year-olds I know. So it's more of your health condition and your perception of what the risk really is, and I'm willing to take that. But people particularly who are experienced, that are successful, I think can make those decisions for themselves if they're well informed. And these are also the people that really want to travel. They want to take advantage of, they've done well in their lives, particularly in our marketplace, and now they're enjoying the fruits of their labor, and to tell them they can't go just seems a little bit counterintuitive. So I'm hoping that The challenge is, I shouldn't say this, but the challenge is, when they show up for Washington and say they're here to help, it's always a problem. So
that is unfortunately true. I mean, they're putting a lot of money into the market, and at least from the travel industry perspective, a lot of that money isn't going to the right places at this point. And
I feel terrible because it looks like the CARES Act was written for the travel industry, and I think ASTA had a lot to do with that. And yet, because of the fact that, again, the government set up a good program, but hasn't figured out how to execute it properly.
Yeah, that's the challenge. And we've been on a lot of calls about that. And the money ran out pretty quickly. That's the challenge. Now we have a new round of funding, and we may yet have another round of funding. But so far, very few travel advisors and even hoteliers have gotten the money they need. And of course, the cruise industry really hasn't gotten any of it, if I recall. I mean, that's the sad part, because but fortunately, your companies are very large, well-capitalized companies that can get through this crisis. And almost everybody from Royal Caribbean, which you're part of, to Carnival, to Norwegian, are now, pretty well capitalized to get through for about a year if they have to.
Yeah, and this is a large business. I mean, we have 85 ships in our fleet alone, and so this is a business, by the way. We announced at the end of the last year that we made $2 billion in profit. So it's a great business. It's just been knocked off the rails a little bit. So I think that the investing community and our lenders are smart enough to continue to support us, because they know this is just a matter of time before we're back into operation. So that's one of the things that we've had to talk to customers about, to instead of canceling, to wait and see. And I think some of them don't realize the structure of the business, or afraid they're going to lose their money, so they panic and cancel. And if you've planned a trip for 3 or 4 months, 6 months, a year to go to the Galapagos, and you're canceling, and it's a trip that's not even taking place to August, it seems like an overreaction. Particularly the fact that we've relaxed our cancellation penalties to get people to wait and see. And then on those cruises that we've been forced to cancel, of course, we're offering generous FCCs of 125%. And where else are you going to make 25% on your money right now? It sure isn't in the stock.
Yeah,
What we've got to really do in our businesses, all of our businesses, is get the advisors to really sell the FCC, because it's a great deal for them, because we've changed our policy there too. We pay the commission on the first booking when the FCC is issued, and then we pay it again when it's used. It used to be that when it was used, we deducted the value of the FCC from the commission before the commission was paid, so they didn't make much money on the second booking. So basically, advisors can now make double money on these bookings. And the other thing it does is, we've tried to do is lock the customer and the advisor together with the FCC, so that in order to redeem the FCC, it's the easiest way to do that is through the advisor who got them on it in the first place.
Right.
The trouble with giving them a refund is that they can go spend that money on something else, and they can book that trip through another advisor. So and besides giving a refund, it drains the cash out of the company, and it makes things worse. So we're really encouraging advisors to sell the FCC and remind them that their customers are safe, because we're part of a large organization, and also they pay with credit cards, so there's some protection there.
No, absolutely. Now, originally we were all set, I guess, this August to you have a new ship coming out, right? You have Silver Moon,
right?
And what's the status of that at this time? I don't know whether they've had delays at the yard or whether that it's almost done. What is the plan for Silver Moon right now?
Well, actually, it's almost completed, but the yard's been closed. Obviously, the yard's in Italy, so it's been closed for over a month now, and actually they're just reopening this week. So we're not sure right now. It's a little bit too soon. It'll depend on how quickly the yard gets up into full operation, and then when they get up into full operation, where they allocate the resources, because as you know, most of the shipyards have full, including Fincantieri, have a pretty full order book, and so they have to take their manpower and their resources and spread them among different projects. So I'm guessing if they can, focus manpower onto the moon, they could get it done in time. If they not, then it could be delayed as long as a month or maybe even 6 weeks. But we just don't know right now. The great news is the Silver Origin on the other side, Holland's not been hit as hard, so she actually went on sea trials last week, and she passed the sea trials. So all she needs right now is the final furniture fittings, and she's ready to go. So we assume that we're going to take delivery of her sometime in early May, mid-May, and then she takes her trip empty to the Galapagos to be registered in Ecuador, and then we hope to have her ready. We will have her ready before she's scheduled to start, which will her first cruise, I think, is the last week in June. So
wow, coming up soon.
So yeah, coming up pretty quick. So, and of course, it's a brand new state-of-the-art ship with all suites, all balconies, state-of-the-art HVAC systems, lots of space. It's a large ship. And you know, and the cool thing about the Galapagos, when you get to the islands, there's the only people you see are the guides, and of course the turtles and those other things. But you're not going to a place where there's a lot of folks to interact with.
No, absolutely. Now you talked already about how you're supporting travel advisors with the FCC and tying the FCC to their bookings. What else are you doing with the travel advisor community to support them in terms of training and information, et cetera?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we're trying to decide ourselves and with them when is it appropriate to get back into the market for some more proactive marketing. And we came up with this plan because people were worried about their cash. You know, I think I've told you the story I had when we had the recession the last time. A customer was booked on a world cruise, and he said he lost $10 million last month in the market. And I had the courage to ask him what he had left. He said about $100 million. So, and he's 80 years old. So I said, what are you waiting for? So he actually took the world cruise after that. But going seriously, the customers are nervous about their portfolio and their money. So they want to travel, but they're not really willing to put up the whole 20% deposit. So we've come up with this program where they can secure their space with a $1,000 deposit. And then when they either make the full payment to get the early booking bonus in June, or they wait till final payment, which is 120 days before sailing, that $1,000 turns into a shipboard credit. So it gives them an extra motivation to continue to plan. The other thing, we're helping agents and advising agents to, take our university courses, and also though, go to your Venetian Society, our past guests first, because those are the people that understand our ethos, our willingness, our desire to make sure they have experiences that are safe yet are trips of their lifetime. And those are the people that are most likely going to come back soon. I remember after 9/11, I would say, when I was at Regent at the time, I would say that for the first 10 or 15 sailings we operated when we went back into operation, it was 90% Seven Seas Society passengers, because first of all, they got it, and they really wanted to get out. Now they weren't isolated either. So can you imagine the picked up demand of people who are normally used to traveling all the time, like yourself and myself, but they do it for fun, and they've been cooped up. They're going to be really ready to travel.
No, absolutely, and that's right. Now, what are you telling travel advisors to be doing at this time, and what are you saying to them about how they can make their customers, especially people who might not have cruised as much, more confident that cruising is a way to go?
I think keeping in touch with them, continuing, everybody has a wander list or a bucket list, whatever you want to call it, and keep talking to them about, and not so much of a sales pitch way, but, checking in on them to see how they're doing. Have they thought about traveling? You can't push a hard sell right now. I don't think it's appropriate, but I think you can have that conversation. And by the way, it also gives the customer something to do while they're locked down. So, planning a vacation for some people is a hassle, but for some people it's half the joy of, planning it in itself. And particularly because of the complicated nature of some of our cruises, like Northeast Passage or the Galapagos or Antarctica or the Arctic. These are programs that, people want to do research ahead of time. They want to read books about Shackleton. They want to know as much as they can about long year buy-in and those things. So it's one of those times to keep in touch with customers in a way that having them tell you how much engaged they want to be.
Right.
I think if you get caught trying to sell them something, you're not going to win. But if you're just consulting with them, I think it's a whole different story.
No, absolutely. Now,
and by the way, Jim, I hate to interrupt again because I do it all the time. But the other thing I think they need to do is keep in touch with those people that are still booked. We're still 50% booked for cruises from July onwards. So those are bookings that are there and live, and people are waiting and seeing. So keep in touch with those customers and encourage them not to cancel. I think it's really critical. And by the way, they should let us cancel because the benefits for the guest and for the advisor are much better. if we cancel the cruise versus them canceling the cruise before it operates. So I just keep in touch with those people that are booked. Bring them up to date on things that you hear happening in the industry. Talk about the fact that Canada's planning to open up in July, that the CDC's kind of said so far it's okay to open up in mid-July. You can't, obviously, there's nothing definite, which is, uncertainty is everybody's enemy, and there's nothing certain. But I think you can at least make sure they're informed by somebody other than the news media who isn't always very objective.
No, absolutely. That's great advice. Now, overall with the cruise industry, though, you've already talked about some of the things that will change. Obviously, testing. We're not going to get away with just signing a doctor's note, or not a doctor's note, signing a little form that says, have you been sick? And you check those boxes and you sign them. And I mean, to be honest with you, there's nobody in their right mind would say they were sick. This is the thing. So I do not understand. It needs to be a better system, a better thing that we can work on.
Yeah, there's going to be a question. There's going to be a questionnaire for sure. And with people wanting to know what you tell us what you've had, what your challenges are. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And so now, we're going to have testing. We're going to have maybe some medical examinations. We're going to have much, even, as you said, norovirus has led to really clean ships, but maybe you go another step, right?
Well, yeah, like for instance, at the entrance of I have to say, I was on the Symphony of the Sea just before this all broke out, and I was so impressed by how focused they are on cleanliness. You cannot walk into one of those dining rooms on that ship without a staff member staying there. Please use the sanitizer. Please wash your hands.
Right.
I think the day of open buffets where people serve themselves are over. I mean, we'll still have buffets from a display perspective, but the fact that people serving themselves and a bunch of people all handling the same utensils, that's going to be changed. I think you're going to see disposable menus. Right now, we have the big, leather book with the binding and everything on it. And my guess is that we'll probably go with some kind of recyclable paper that can be, tossed after it's used so that people aren't changing hands. I think there will be some additional distancing. The good news about our ships is they're large with lots of space, so distancing isn't as big a problem as it is for other businesses. But we'll have to focus on that. And I think the other thing will be shore excursions. What sort of shore excursions do you offer? And so, for instance, if you use a motor coach, it's a 45-passenger motor coach, do you just put 20, 25 people on it? Or do you, instead of going to a place where there's a crowded museum, maybe you go to something that's more of a natural sightseeing place. So those are all the things that we're taking under consideration. And if you think about our business particularly, that's kind of what we focus on, is giving that customer that exclusive experience. So we think we can pull that off. And again, the key issue will be making sure that getting people together on the ship, crew and guests that don't have the virus, and then make sure when they go ashore they don't pick it up. Again, probably testing when they come back, and making sure, reminding them to, if necessary, wear a mask, if necessary, wear gloves. But we think we can work our way around it.
Yeah, well, in fact, as you mentioned earlier, you're really very much involved in expedition cruising now, and so you're going to places like the Galapagos, going to places like Antarctica, and I don't think we can pick up the virus there yet. I think that's going to be
the penguins don't have it.
as far as we know, but they haven't done their testing yet, so who knows? Now, overall, how do you think the cruise industry will emerge from this crisis whenever it's really over? I mean, we are starting to get back. States are starting to reopen. Countries are starting to reopen, even before we have a vaccine or even a nominal cure. But things are starting to get back. But when do you think cruising will be back, and how will it be different at that point?
Well, I think it's going to be depending on where we are when it starts. I think that we will open up, probably even if there's not a solid cure or a vaccine before that, again, based on testing and self-distancing. And so it'll start slowly. It'll probably start domestically, maybe, because long-haul airplanes. Although I have to say, I was on an American flight. We had guests that were we had a charter plane to bring people off the Shadow, in mid-March, and I flew down to Dallas to meet them when they got in, and I've never been on cleaner airplanes than I've ever been to.
Cleaner or more empty airplanes, right?
Yeah, well, actually, interesting enough, both of these were pretty full, particularly, and I was fortunate enough to be in business class, so they were pretty full. But the difference, but sometimes you open your tray and it was dirty, and boy, you can see that it took longer to turn the plane around, but everything was scoured. I think they're paying a lot more attention to their air filtration systems. So that's where it begins. I wouldn't be surprised if for the near future, for a while, that we'll all be required to wear a mask while we're on board.
Yeah, well, some airlines are requiring that. Some are making it optional. Some are issuing them. I said it's the new amenity, for an airline. They'll sell you a mask for a couple bucks, right?
Or I have their logo on it.
No, that's it. Well, I understand that there was a rumor that your parent company had patented a mask. I'm not sure if that was true or not, but
I'm not either. I'm not sure. But I think what happens once there's a treatment and a vaccine, I think you'll see the business just skyrocket. Because I said at the end of the day, it's the most popular vacation in the world, right? So, why would it not be? And again, once people can put the risk profile into perspective, then I think they're in a much better position to go. And there's going to be a lot of pent up demand. So
yeah, I agree.
It's not going to take off immediately, but I think you'll see it like it did after 9/11. There was this gradual comeback, and then it took off. And we had one of the best years we ever had is 2002. So.
No, it's great. And I think, let's hope next year, 2021 will be a great year. Sadly, 2020 was supposed to be a great year, but everybody's looking at it, even though it was an election year here in the States, people sort of had forgotten about that, at least from what I heard.
We were 80% sold before this started. So to give you an idea, for the whole year. So the business is there. It needs to come back, and again, people need to feel comfortable. They don't want to risk their life going on a trip, and I can totally understand that. So if we can assure them that we're doing everything we can to make them safe, what has to happen is it should be no more dangerous to go on a trip than it is to stay home. I always joke that if you're over a certain age, the number one cause of injury and death and hospitalization is actually a slip and fall in the bathroom. So don't take that.
Well, and let's just hope we don't get to the point where it will actually be cheaper to go on a cruise than it is to stay at home, because
that model doesn't, as you know, that model doesn't work for us, because we get our money out of the ticket because everything's included on board. So we're hoping that's not the case.
Okay. Anything else you want to get out to our 100,000 travel advisors in the market?
No, I admire them so much. They're entrepreneurial. They take risks. They're a risk reward business. Many of them made great businesses out of their business. There are so many different business models. Whether it's like the IC model, where it's the brick and mortar model, where it's the call center model. And again, we got to keep reminding ourselves, we were all making money 3 months ago, and it was booming even 2.5 months ago. And now it stopped. So the sooner we can get back to normal, these businesses should resume and be as healthy as they ever were. And the great, if there's any good news that comes out of a disaster like this, is that you typically learn lessons about what you were doing right and what you were doing wrong. So for instance, I tell advisors now, if you're not dealing with a client, reshaping them or doing something like that, why don't you clean up your mailing list, which you've never had a chance to do because you've been too busy? Why don't you look at the way your systems are organized and maybe get them better organized? Why don't you take a closer look at your business and clean it up as best you can, so that when we start operating again, you can go out at full speed? Versus, because what happens is when things are busy, you have the excuse of not doing things you don't really want to do because you're too busy. And then now if you have some time on your hands, take advantage of that. So when you get too busy, you can be too busy more productively and more profitably.
Absolutely. Good advice. Mark, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. Glad you and Marilyn are safe down there in South Florida. And I really can't wait. In fact, just before this all came out in December, we were on a cruise with both of you in the Caribbean. It was a marvelous cruise. We enjoyed it very much. And we look really are looking forward to getting back at sea and hopefully on one of your ships one of these days. And as you said, it may come up pretty soon in June, July.
Well, we're hoping, you know.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks very much. Great to see you, and we'll talk soon.
I appreciate it, James, and thanks for you and all you do for the industry. It's important for us now more than ever to be in touch with each other, and you're doing a great job of helping people do that.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.